Hey everybody, this is Brian here. We're going to be talking about seizure advice from the day of, tips for the auras, when they're culminating and getting serious, and after the seizure when you're walking around in that haze, that debilitated haze that follows a big grand mal, or follows just not knowing what happened. If it happened in your sleep, you just kind of wake up, huh? Where am I? Just kind of confused. Anyways, let's get to number one on this list already, which is going to be a tip to avoid overeating sugar. I think that it makes my brains overact, or my brain waves overactive personally. I think that one of the worst culprits of this is soda, because it's often caffeinated and has up to like 60 grams of sugar in a large, depending on the brand. Avoid caffeine very carefully because it'll make you feel like you're nervous or having an anxiety attack. And I think that these sorts of things of overlivening our brain waves it kind of can provoke a seizure, in my opinion. Number two is to remember that your brain is like a radio wave. If a radio wave gets interference into it, it gets static and it may cut out. But multifocal epilepsy is a lot like that too, because your brain waves are already unusual or erratic more than normal. The idea of number one and two is to not amp up the radio, essentially. Number three is to not get derailed. The next day after a major seizure is usually one where we're tired, drained, and unable to keep up with our lives' responsibilities. This is an easy way to get derailed and left in a lethargic depression because of instead of being able to stay on track. Like if you've began writing or reading regularly, if you began a diet or something, but you just had a seizure and all of a sudden you just feel like, oh, fuck it, you just feel like laying in bed and forgetting the world, but it's not helpful. So I think that, my tip for number three is to not get derailed, because the next day after a major seizure is usually the one where we feel the worst. And so this is an easy way to get uh, basically kicked off track on your normal habits, hobbies, and accomplishments, things that you're trying to keep up on that make you feel good about yourself. Write down what you have to do, like your obligations, and what you want to do. Create an obligations column on that paper for when you're closer to 100% so you can fulfill your responsibilities like feeding your plants or watering your garden or something. Next to it, write about the things that you were feeling good about before and before you had a seizure, but now feel too worn out to partake in. Take it as something to look forward to instead of just something that'll never be able to happen again. Remember, seizures are usually a cyclical thing, so you should be able to do those things again soon. Don't really buy into the word never again, or the term never again. Again, take it as something to look forward to instead of thinking that you've been derailed permanently from your daily routines and hobbies and responsibilities. Um, Number four on here is going to be to keep track of post-seizure auras. The day of a seizure can be worrisome or dangerous because it can present symptoms that you may have another seizure in a pair coming soon, or merely afterwards, shortly. So if you aren't out of the woods yet and you feel another epileptic event is right around the corner, you might be being warned by your auras. Um, uh, Make sure that you're prepared so you aren't struck by one in a vulnerable state. Wear some head protection and put some padding down on the floor, but mostly keep track of your auras so you know if you've walked kind of towards the edge of the plank and you don't dive in head first. Number five on here is going to be sleep seizures. If you are at all like me and have seizures in your sleep, be cautious when lying down. Avoid the side of the bed so you don't roll off while convulsing or shaking. This can lead to hitting your head or a lot of different bone breaks if you land wrong. If you have any extra blankets on your bed, pile them to the outsides of the bed like a barricade almost so you don't roll off. That's one thing that I could advise. Number six on here is going to be balance issues while walking. If you have balance issues when walking that may make you feel apprehensive about a fall, beware of them flaring up around seizure time. I feel like that kind of clumsiness is often is often a sign, a sign that you're feeling that haze mentally, and that you're having some sort of aura again, that your legs might not be working completely in symbiosis, in sync with each other more so. Um, Anyways, one thing that's helped me to stand up straight easier is to get a brand of shoes called Crocs. When I walk barefoot, I often worry about stumbling, falling, or tripping over my own feet, and it's happened before. So I feel less prone to these falls, better balanced, and it also just helps me stand up straight with a variety of different foot pains if I wear them. So I feel better basically with these shoes on than I do walking around barefoot, where I find that my feet, get calluses, and I often feel like I'm walking like an inflatable dancing man, all cross-legged. Um, in my opinion, the rubber soles made me less wobbly. They provided some foot support, so to speak. Um, I have owned several pairs of these at different points, and I would recommend them to people with walking issues, not just feeling walking issues as an order to epilepsy, obviously, but any sort of walking issues. Um, Next thing is number 7, which is to set things down besides you. Um, I don't mean this in an abstract sense, but in really a literal sense. One time I fell while holding a cup and it broke, and I hurt my hand and I fractured an index finger. I fell on top of the broken cup. Therefore, I would recommend that you set things on a counter or a coffee table. Set them in a cup holder. It doesn't really matter. Any possible alternative to you landing on them is basically a positive. Um, Additional tips: get less breakable dishes when you feel better so you don't shatter something brittle if you fell during a seizure. Um, Plastic isn't always better than glass, by the way. So set these things down in a safe plate, when you're eating, or safe place when you're eating. Number 8 is head protection. The crash hat, which I'm wearing and I reviewed a little while ago, isn't a helmet, and they say so as much on their own website. They say this is not a substitute for a helmet. Anyways, therefore, if that isn't sufficient, you may need to be honest with yourself and get a full protection helmet. Sometimes things like the crash hat, which is really kind of a facsimile or a pseudo helmet, it's not quite as unhelpful as like a baseball hat. But I think that it's obviously not a full helmet. It doesn't protect your entire head and parts of the back of my head also. I feel like it's kind of a better than nothing type thing now that I've had a little bit more experience with it. But anyways, yeah, you may need to get a full helmet. You may need to be honest with yourself and ask myself, all right, I might not want this. It might be kind of conspicuous, but do I really need this? Is this something that would be important to my health and safety? I've tried beanies, baseball hats. I've tried this crash hat, and the first two didn't work out at all. And the third is kind of, I would say it's not helping as much as I'd hoped. So mundane hats are totally inadequate in fall protection, and the crash hat can leave some areas not fully covered by its short length. Think of health, therefore, before style. If you need it, then get it, because even a conspicuous or unstylish hat is better than a head injury, essentially. Um, Also, I would recommend look around when you do your research. Search around a lot of different websites, not just Amazon, because often when I looked on there, I found things such as bizarre lacrosse helmets and soccer headgear and stuff. And, I just found a lot of stuff that wasn't very useful to me and was also very overpriced. Um, so I guess the end of that tip is to remember that health goes before egoic self-consciousness. Think about what your safety requires rather than just wanting to look cool. Number 9 on here is generalizing seizures versus partial ones. Some auras are more telling in that they may generalize to a full seizure if you feel them coming on, even if you took your emergency medications. Today, I had a partial face seizure, like my eyes kind of got all cross-eyed. Even after I had taken my personal emergency medication, I still ended up with a grand mal seizure several hours later. So my advice is to stay cautious and to keep an eye on those auras, even if they aren't in the normal periods which they come in. You might feel that you're having an aura like an hour before or sorry, like a day before your seizure or something. And if it comes in an unusual time period, still don't just kind of discount that, because it can mean something, and it can mean something serious. Even if they aren't in the normal periods, they can still precede an unexpected seizure. Be aware on the day of that it may be outside your regular seizure cycle or pattern. Be aware of that day, because sometimes things come when we're not ready for them, particularly. Don't pass off your partial seizures, such as like facial myoclonus, as a minor seizure event. It may be something that's more of a warning sign. It may be more telling of what's going to come in the future, rather than just one of those little twitches that often happens when we have epilepsy. Number 10 on here is going to cover the more serious issue of epilepsy injuries. So here's a few recommendations for if you frankly got hurt during a seizure. Happens to us all. But if you got really badly hurt, or if you, these are a range of tips, frankly. So number 1 on here is on this epilepsy injuries. Well, it's also number 1 on here, but number 10 on the list. So eat soft foods such as things like oatmeal or frozen vegetables, Boost or Carnation instant breakfast. Try not to get malnourished when you're limited to healing in bed, because often when you're not cognizant, you may end up having to take your epilepsy medicine on an empty stomach. So you want to make up for those vitamins that you may not have gotten, and just not get malnourished or dehydrated. I have to do these things, to keep myself from exacerbating my tongue bite wounds. Oftentimes, since I have seizures in my sleep, I often bite my tongue, and I wake up finding that I'll have to eat things such as pudding, or I'll have to just drink water for a while. If you also got a serious head injury and are worried about the medicines that they're giving you if you're in the hospital, make sure to ask persistently what side effects they have, and if they interact with your epilepsy meds at all. Doctors often downplay serious side effects of medications, to make them seem more innocuous, to make them seem less harmful. When injured, don't get taken advantage of by snake oil salesmen in lab coats. Don't be treated like a lab rat in your own case. Be the captain of your own ship. If you need surgery due to a critical injury, I understand that, but don't let them gouge into you when many injuries heal due to natural rest and taking it easy, relaxation. Be careful also of pain medicines. Uh, they can often lead to addiction after seizure. They merely numb the pain, but they don't heal it. So the need for them is still there. And people keep taking them because they get hooked biologically. You know how a lot of medicines are hard to wean yourself off of? People just need an answer to the pain oftentimes, so they don't even try to wean themselves off it. Um, if you fell down the stairs or got in a serious car accident that left you with a lifelong chronic injury, I'm very sorry, and I hope that you heal and that you feel better. But I recommend things such as CBD, or just taking it easy, instead of becoming another victim of something like the opioid or prescription drug epidemic. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. This is from the point of view of somebody who's had a seizure within the last 12 or so hours. It was about 7 o'clock last night, exactly 12 hours ago, actually. So thank you guys for watching. This is kind of from the frontline view. Anyways, so I hope it's helped somebody. I love you guys because you're you. But remember that the thing that matters most is that you keep loving yourself, even if people tell you to do otherwise during a vulnerable state, such as having had a seizure. And remember to not get taken advantage of when you're in a vulnerable state either. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope that these tips are of value to you, because I think that there's a diverse enough array on here where it can help everybody. So thank you guys. I'm out. Peace.